Good evening, everyone. I'm Kelly Beatty for Chelmsford TeleMedia, and we're back at the Senior Center here in North Chelmsford for the second night of the fall session of our town meeting. Now, for those of you who were with us on Monday night, you saw that things went pretty according to script. You know, there were no zoning bylaws, there wasn't a budget to debate, and so things went pretty swiftly through the 21 warrant articles. We got through all but one. And it's that one warrant article that we're going to be tackling tonight. It's a big one. It's calling for the renovation of 2 of the 5 fire stations here in town. This is the South Fire Station and the West Fire Station. Those 2 have been in a bad state of decline. You know, I was looking something up. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, that between 1960 and 1970, the population of Chelmsford more than doubled from about 15,000 to more than 30,000 people. And it was during that period of time that many of our schools got built, many of our fire stations got built. A lot of the infrastructure here in town came about then. That, folks, was more than 70 years ago, 60 to 70 years ago. And so, not surprisingly, some of the buildings that we have, the municipal buildings that we have, are in need of repair. Now, we've been down this road before. A decade ago, we town meeting voted to move the Central Fire Station to a new building right next to Town Hall. Then, just a few years ago, we went to repair the North Fire Station through a modular addition that went pretty smoothly, I think. And so, in some sense, this is a path that has been trod before by town meeting reps. It's hard to know how this is going to go. It could go quickly. It could go very long. I just asked John Curland, our moderator, how long he thought it would be. He wants to be out of here by 9:30. Let's see how well he handles that. You know, on the one hand, the town has a reputation for really supporting the fire department and the members that serve us daily to keep us safe. The number of calls has gone up. You're going to hear a lot of information tonight about how much more the fire department is doing now than it used to do. And so the town has been supportive of that. On the other hand, it is asking for a lot of money, somewhere between $20 and $25 million to rehab these 2 fire stations, and that's going to add to the tax bill. And a lot of people are under pressure post-COVID from inflation and all the other factors that bear on life as we know it here in Chelmsford. And the couple of $100 per year that your taxes will likely go up if you're a resident is going to weigh on this. And I think we're going to hear both sides of this at some length. Now, I have said that, I've been here in town since the mid-1980s, and a lot has changed. And one of the things I've seen is that an evolution of town meeting from open town meeting to representative town meeting, and also a sort of growing sophistication of the town meting members to appreciate the nuances of what's being presented before them. So let's see if that plays out tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well done. Okay, we only have one article on the agenda for this evening, so we need a quorum count first, though. I'm sure that there's a quorum just looking here, but let's make it official.
Sure looks like a quorum from the number of people that we see seated. I suspect that this will be a very well-attended meeting this evening. You can see by the number of clickers, this is just a check of the electronic clicker system that allows the town meeting reps to vote one way or the other. It's always curious that 1 or 2 reps decide to vote no just because they like seeing the color red. Who knows? You'll notice a lot of white there. There are now 11
Okay, we do have a quorum.
And not enough people are coming forward to serve as town meeting reps.
Article 16 regarding the West Chelmsford and South Chelmsford Fire Station is going to be presented by the Chair of the Fire Station Study Committee, Select Board Member Virginia Crocker-Timmons.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me in the back? Okay. Thank you. What we're here for this evening is to review a warrant article for the reconstruction of fire stations 3 and 5. I'll get into that in a little bit more. In order for this project to be funded, it needs to pass by a 2/3 vote here this evening and a majority vote at the ballot in November. Before I start, I'd just like to introduce the committee. They're all seated up here at the front table and available for questions later. As Paul said, I'm the Select Board representative. We have 2 management representatives. One is Town Manager Paul Cohen. The other is Fire Chief Gary Ryan, who has been with our fire department for 30 years and has been the Chelmsford Fire Chief for the last 9. We also have 2 firefighter representatives. Rob Albon is a Chelmsford resident. He's been with the fire department for 6 years, and he is also the president of the firefighter union. And then we have Greg Segnini, who grew up in Chelmsford as a Chelmsford High graduate, is also a firefighter in the department for the last 13 years, and is the secretary treasurer of the union. We have 2 resident representatives. Our first is Cheryl O'Donnell. Cheryl retired after 23 years as a Massachusetts State Police officer. She spent 18 years of her career assigned to the Office of the State Fire Marshal as a certified fire and explosion investigator. And then our second resident representative is Bob Destra. Bob has lived in Chelmsford since 1993. He is a career fighter who has served in the city of Lowell for 30 years, and he's been a deputy chief in the city of Lowell for the last 11. Where do I point? Okay. So just a little bit about the bottom line of why we're here tonight. The committee has unanimously recommended $25 million for the construction and reconstruction of Station 3, which is at Roberts Field on Old Westford Road, and Station 5 in South Chelmsford, located on Acton Road. And I'll get into this in a little bit more detail, but our recommendation basically lies on 2 factors. One on issues surrounding public safety and preserving the public safety in town, and the second is firefighter health and safety due to the building ages and compliance with modern day standards and things that the firefighters are exposed to today. So the Select Board in June unanimously recommended putting this on the ballot to take it to the voters of Chelmsford. And as I said earlier, it needs a 2/3 vote this evening and then a simple majority at the ballot in order to pass. This is just the language for the article and the language that is on the ballot, which was approved by the state. So I want to get into a little bit about the committee's work and how we landed at where we are. We were appointed back in November of 2021. We had an organizational meeting in January of the following year. We toured all 5 stations, and then we rolled up our sleeves and got to work. We completed, I think, the study probably after a little over 2.5 years, and we've spent the last couple months getting ready for this and taking it to the ballot. And I'll step through some of the methodology and things that we talked through. So this slide just gives you an overview of our 5 stations in Chelmsford today. We're talking about Station 3 in the lower left corner and Station 5 in the lower right corner. Station 1 and Station 2 are our newest stations. Station 4 currently has no major safety or living issues. It was built in 1976, but it was built a little bit differently than the other 2 stations, with living quarters segregated from apparatus bays and some other things that really don't present the same concerns that we have with 3 and 5. And those concerns are focused around the fact that these buildings have outlived their 50-year lifespan. They are presenting safety and hazard issues to our firefighters with living quarters exposed to contaminants, and they are not built to accommodate the modern needs of the town of Chelmsford as those needs have grown, or a modern-day fire department considering things like multiple genders. So what the committee did first off was we identified what we called critical success factors, and these 5 factors are what went into our trade space as we looked at different scenarios and different options. The first was the station conditions themselves. Not only the conditions, but how are they equipped to house not only the firefighters, but also modern-day apparatus, which is larger and there is more of it than there was 50 years ago. Staffing in terms of firefighter safety. So how many firefighters are we putting on an apparatus? What's the overall shift strength staffing? And how do we look in terms of officers and span of control for an emergency? And then we looked at the apparatus itself, as I just mentioned, and then response times in public safety. So a response time is the time it takes the emergency team to get from the fire station to you after you make the call that you need help. And then we also looked at the cost trades. So as I said, the bottom line is that the committee is recommending that we maintain the 5-station configuration that we have in Chelmsford. We analyzed a number of 3, 4, and 5-station configurations. I'll talk a little bit about the 3 and 4 and why we eliminated those, but they basically came down to public safety. And the 5-station configuration was the one that made the most sense from the standpoint of both public safety and the staffing and accommodating the needs of the town today. So if I talk a little bit about first just the conditions of the stations, you see some photographs here from stations 3 and 5. The top 2 pictures, that white box, are the sleeping quarters for the firefighters in that station, and if you look down at the bottom center, the sleeping quarters in both stations are similar. They're very narrow and they have 2 beds in them. That white box is in the apparatus bay. It's only a few feet away from the fire truck. You can also see the firefighters' gear hung on the outside of that, so the gear is exposed to contaminants from the exhaust of the fire truck. There is also no way to decontaminate gear in these stations when a firefighter comes back from a call. So the only facilities that we have that can remove those carcinogens from firefighters' gear are at stations 1, 2, and 4, correct? The middle right photograph here, whoops. The middle right shows a locker room in one of the stations, and it's right in the apparatus bay. And so the firefighters' regular clothing that they wear is also exposed to the same contaminants. If you look at the middle left here, you can see how crowded that particular bay is. This is engine 5. The red fire truck is off to the right. In the front of the photo, you see their exercise equipment also in the same bay. And behind the exercise equipment is the rescue boat that they use for Hart Pond and other bodies of water. And then down below, you see the bathrooms were built for one gender. And as I said, the only clothing wash facilities they have are really regular washing machines. There's nothing that's adequate to decontaminate. So I want to just talk a little bit about the 3 and the 4 and why we eliminated those. The 3-station configuration was actually the first solution, or hypothesis, I should say, that we brought to the select board during our first status report. And that was pending getting professional response time analyses back. And once we got those analyses back, we immediately took it off the table. So if you think about a 3-station configuration, it could be less expensive, and our hypothesis at the time was that it would still provide adequate public safety. So if I go into why we threw this away, first I just want to make sure we're all speaking the same language. When I say first due response on this slide, that means the first truck apparatus and the first company to arrive on scene. When I say second due, that means the second apparatus and second company to arrive on scene. If you look at the colors on the slides, red is good. Red is a 1-minute response time. So red through orange represents 1, 2, 3, and 4 minutes, and yellow through green represents 5, 6, 7, and 8 minutes, and white is greater than 8. Just down at the bottom of the chart, so you're all calibrated, the national standards recommend that the first engine or the first due company arrive within 4 minutes, and for a full alarm that the second due arrive within 8 minutes, and that's based on scientific and historical data. In Chelmsford, we currently enjoy a response time from our fire department of 84 to 85% of all the calls they're able to respond to within 4 minutes. So if we now just look at the maps themselves, our hypothesis initially was keep Station 1 in the center and Station 2 in North Chelmsford, eliminate Station 3 and 5 and take the need to renovate these stations off the table, and build a new station somewhere in the vicinity of Littleton and Hunt Road. And you can see in the first slide here, there's an awful lot of that yellow to green. So we gave up a lot in terms of response times and getting there within the 4 minutes for the first due. As you get to the second due, you're now getting into too many regions in Chelmsford where you're into the white or greater than 8 minutes. The other thing that we looked at in this scenario is we said, well, the fire department is experiencing an escalation of medical calls over the years, and many of them are to our vulnerable communities, including seniors. So on this last slide, we took 8 Sheila Ave, which is a population that's dense with our vulnerable community and seniors, and said, okay, if there's an emergency there, the first engine to respond will come out of Station 2 in North Chelmsford, near Vinyl Square, and then the second due will either come from Station 1 or Station 3, and that second due response time for those 2 stations were in excess of 8 and 10 minutes. And this is why we threw away the 3-station scenario. We also looked at 4-station scenarios, first eliminating Station 3 in the first slide, and the second slide eliminating Station 5, and in the third slide eliminating Station 4. In the first 2 scenarios where we eliminate one of the stations that we're proposing to reconstruct, you can see again there's an awful lot of sacrifice in the first due response time, including regions that are now getting into the white or greater than 8 minutes. If you look at the most, I guess the best case 4-station scenario is on the far right, but what happens here is in East Chelmsford would experience increased response times for 20% of the calls that come from that area today. So we said that was not desirable, and so we went back to the 5-station scenario. This shows you the heat map for the 5-station. You can see how much better it is for the 3 or the 4. Again, just looking at some of the compromises that come from this, we help to secure the public safety that we have now in terms of trying to increase staffing down the road. There are a couple compromises that needed to happen. We'll still need to do some cross-staffing of the center station apparatus, and we'll have a couple of stations that still have 2 firefighters. But that was a compromise that the fire department and the firefighters and the rest of the committee felt was worth doing in order to preserve the public safety. So this slide just shows you a little bit about how the needs have evolved in town. On the top, you see the Census Bureau data and the population and how that's grown. So in 1960s and early 70s, when those stations were built, our population was around 15,000, and in the 2020 census data, we were up over 36,000. If you go down to the bottom left table here, Chief Ryan gave us some data on the calls that the fire department receives. And you can see how over 2 decades, the number of calls has increased and the number of medical calls has also escalated. One of the things that I found really interesting, we didn't have the 2023 data when we did this slide, but in 1966, when the first station was built, they were getting 850 calls a year. And in 2023, they're up to 6,354. And if you look at even the difference between 2022 and 2023, they have more than 300 calls in just the course of 1 year. The other thing at the bottom of the slide here is with the needs in town and the number of calls and the population increasing, the staffing in our fire department today is about the same as it was 25 years ago. And so we need this room to be able to grow in the future. There's other factors here that you're all familiar with in terms of the UMass West campus development, the MBTA zoning, and other things that might also affect the population and the growing demand. So just a couple things on response time considerations. In Chelmsford, the first due company, as I said, for 84 to 85% of the calls arrives within 4 minutes. Their responsibility is victim safety and getting water immediately on for fire suppression. If they use the water on that first apparatus at full rate, they only have enough water to last for 3 minutes. So that's where the second due response time becomes very critical, because they need to provide water beyond that 3-minute time mark. So when you're starting to, besides the medical calls, when you're starting to now talk about response times in some of these scenarios that went beyond 8 minutes, that was just unacceptable. And then there's other missions and that our firefighters fulfill besides structure fires. I mentioned the medical emergencies and the escalation that we're seeing there in town, especially with our location close to the highways and the traffic that comes through town. They respond to a lot of motor vehicle accidents, and they also help with mutual aid requests from other surrounding communities. And so basically, when it comes to the response time, you are literally talking either life or death or loss of property. And again, that's based on the national scientific standards. Another key thing that came into consideration as we were doing this study is an emerging OSHA standard that Chief Ryan has been following and expects to come formally in the 2026 timeframe. And on the left side of the chart, there's a number of things that this new OSHA standard for emergency responders addresses. At the bottom is the one that we're concerned about here, which is facility safety. And so that standard is going to have specific requirements in it relative to exposure to carbon monoxide and carcinogens. And so our concern is that if we don't do something now, we run the risk of getting shut down when these OSHA standards come out. So the committee engaged with the Permanent Building Committee, and the Permanent Building Committee got an independent analysis done by Weston and Sampson. They did a concept analysis for both stations 3 and 5. What you're seeing here is station 3. Roberts Field is off here. This gray area here, this gray box, is the existing bay. And what we're proposing is, in the concept, is that a single-story unit or expansion would be put here where the yellow box is. And then you can see the floor plan on the right side of the chart. What that yellow box expansion would do is in these green areas, you would basically have proper decontamination facilities for people and equipment and gear. And then you would have living quarters and exercise facilities that are segregated from the apparatus bay and the carcinogens that are in the apparatus bay. The cost estimate for this ranged anywhere from $8 to $10.5 million, depending whether you did stick or modular build. Our hypothesis is that this could likely be done with modular, since it's a single floor story and fairly straightforward. Station 5 is on a much more challenging lot. The lot size is very small, and this would likely be a complete tear down and a rebuild of a 2-story fire station. So in the floor plan here, again, you can see on the first story we'd have an apparatus bay. The green boxes represent those decontamination facilities for people and gear. And then you would have exercise facilities on the first floor and living quarters on the second floor that are completely segregated from the contaminants in the apparatus bay. The range for this one ran from 12 to 14 million, and so that's how we came up with the $25 million estimate, because the total possible range was somewhere between 20 to just under 25. We used the worst case. So the next thing we looked at is a conservative estimate, assuming a 4% interest rate over 20 years. What is the impact to the average household in town? So for the average assessed household whose property is assessed at $629,000, the estimate is $157 in the first year, or $3 a week. And then at the end of the 20-year bond period, it would drop to about $90 a year. And there's other things happening in the Senate that we're tracking. There doesn't seem to be much movement, but there may be other opportunities over the next year or two to look at getting some funding to help supplement. We did not assume that in this analysis. This slide shows you the excluded debt service, historical and projected for the town, and what we were carrying. So on the first line, this green box with the circle is for the sewer project. That debt was paid off last year and came off the books. The purple box with the triangle is for the secondary school projects, which included the auditorium at the high school, and that will be paid off during this fiscal year. And then the one that's left is the DPW Alpha Road. We did not put the potential for the school building on this chart because we don't know when or how much. So if you consider just what is known right now, you wind up with starting out the excluded debt service in 2026 for the 2 fire stations at $2.25 million. The net debt, however, with everything coming off the books, winds up being about $1.4 million. So that $157 for the average household will be a little less than that. And then I'll just put this up quickly. We've really tried to do our best with what's legally allowed to provide as much information out there for the public in different forms, and to provide summary as well as all the details that we have, so that we're as transparent as possible. So I'll open it up for questions, and I do have the whole committee here to help answer questions.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of Article 16.
Does the Select Board have a recommendation?
The Select Board recommends approval of this article by a vote of 4 in favor and 1 opposed.
Okay. Any questions? Really? I mean, it was very comprehensive.
Badri Upalipan, Precinct 11.
I'm just going to have you guys go.
Question is, what's the expected lifetime of the new buildings that are being constructed?
Good evening. If I understand the question, the life expectancy of the building, is that correct?
Correct.
50 years.
50 years. The flooring for these, will they be, are they being reinforced at the bottom for any structural issues of future fire vehicles being more heavier, or having ladder capacity for buildings that may grow up?
So
to
the
be
design
beyond?
build would be yes for
Correct
heavier
on that.
vehicles, which is something we obviously ran in with the old station, 7 North Road. Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
And on the modular, which is Station 3, would that be a modular as in a built-in unit coming in, or is it modular as in, what's the description of modular specifically?
So when we did Engine 2, for an example, back in 2021, that was what they call pen construction. They actually built it in Pennsylvania. They pin it together like a box, pull it apart when they're done, put it on flatbeds, and they ship it up
And
here.
then ship it out.
And they put it back together.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Will the roof be capable of solar panels?
Yes, the roof will be capable, and we are under the energy flex code, stretch code, so yes, we will have to fall under those rules.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy Tuberty, Precinct 8. In your pictures, you have, if I counted right, 6 bedrooms. in
Correct.
each of those two things?
Yes.
Are those single bedrooms? Are they two for bedrooms? What's the?
They are single bedrooms.
They're single?
Yes.
That's good, because I was thinking you were asking for eventually 12 firefighters in each station. That would be a little more than we could probably handle right now. But is this because you're thinking that eventually we're going to have to increase our quantity above 3? I mean, why 6?
So you build it for 50 years. So we build it for the future, so the standard right now calls for 4 on a piece. We don't have that right now, but you build for the future.
Okay.
So yes,
And then back to the weighted, there's no basement under these. These are like on slabs, correct?
they're on slabs. yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
David Rand, Precinct 1. I was wondering when you guys were doing all this, figuring personnel was part of the problem back along. We had an increased number of firefighters and stuff, and so cross-training is what, a lot of towns are doing. They're using ambulance people as firefighters and back and forth. Also, there was a, what do you call it, fire chief out in Arizona who used cross-trained people from the DPW and, the street sweepers and, what do you call it?
Public safety.
Is this a question, or?
Yes.
I'm just trying to get to.
I was
where we're
wondering
going.
if you had heard of this cross-training using
It's generally-
people outside of the
Yeah, generally outside of Massachusetts, yes, they do have what they call public safety departments where there is cross-training.
Right, so,
Not really common up here in the Northeast,
right, I was wondering, it wasn't considered then at all.
but this, no.
That would cut down, some of the need of all the construction and stuff that's.
I don't know, because if you look at the OSHA requirements that are coming out, even the departments that you're talking about out, predominantly out west, and on the East Coast, down in Pennsylvania, these codes that are coming out in 2026, OSHA, I think will impact potentially those departments, to the point where they may have to specialize and segregate, police and fire, because there's going to be more restrictions, more safety requirements that will be coming down on us, and particularly training.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Claire Janot, Precinct 4. Thanks for the presentation and all the work of the committee. I have 2 questions. One on Roberts Field. Well, are these generally the final placement of the buildings and the designs of the buildings, or are they very preliminary? Where are we at?
So the placements, yes, they are staying in place. As far as the design, there are some minor tweaks that we can do inside the building in the footprint, but generally
Okay.
what you see is pretty much it.
Is there any slide you can bring up on the, that matches the board out back for Station 3?
For the floor plans, is that what you're?
Not the floor plan,
The site?
the
Site plans?
placement on the site, yeah.
Okay.
Are they,
The one that was in the presentation or a different one?
that one's fine.
Okay.
So my question is about the wetlands and whether or not that's properly outside what buffer is required.
So I did have a conversation with the conservation agent. This will, if this does pass, we will have to go before conservation.
Uh-huh.
It is his opinion that it will pass.
And, conservation won't have a problem with it being that
I'm not saying they
close?
won't have a problem with it. We will still have to go before the Conservation Board to present this plan because of the distance between the water and the edge of the
Yeah.
building. And it was actually the conservation agent's idea to actually push the building back. I sought his opinion on this. The actual original plan called for the building to go a little more towards Old Westford Road. It was his idea to push it back a little bit.
There wasn't any concept that put it on the other side of the existing building?
We did think about that. You're talking about the west side, closer to the parking lot. The utilities run on the west side.
Okay,
So you would have to relocate all those utilities.
okay. All right, thank you very
You're
much.
Thank you.
Anita Tanini, Precinct 10. The center fire station, has that been paid, that debt been paid off?
Good evening. For the Center Fire Station, the bonds are still outstanding, and the first one was issued in 2012. That's scheduled to be repaid in fiscal year 32.
Okay, thank you. Now, the renovations we did in North Chelmsford, were those bonded or were those out of operating? I don't remember.
Yes, the North Fire Station was bonded. We issued a bond in April of 2021, and that's scheduled to be repaid in fiscal year 2041.
Okay. So then my question to the moderator, to the speaker, we're doing 2 fire stations. One, why didn't we just choose one?
So
At
the
a time?
idea,
Oh,
so
okay.
when we were looking at this, and we saw, so go back to your question about engine 2, that was
Yeah.
$3.4 million back just 3 years ago. It'll be 3 years in December when we open that station. And you see the price now. The escalation for these buildings, this is priced for 2026. We did not predict, and even our Weston Sampson didn't, and we were following the projections, the high escalation. That's why we did the 2, because of the prices. We don't know what it's going to be in 27 or 28, the prices. Plus, with the 2, we can have one owner's project manager to oversee both. And the thought from Weston and Sampson was if you do 2, it may open it up to more bidders. It may make it more attractive to outside contractors to bid on 2 projects within the town.
Okay, following that logic, then why didn't we not include East Chelmsford Fire Station? Because that one was built in 76, so that's 40 years old. I guess if we're doing, like, are you going to come back in 2 years and ask for that one to be redone? So if we're going to do all of it, like, we should do all of it, or we should do one at a time. Just kind of wondering, like, the logic behind it.
So we had a study and evaluation of all the buildings. So back in just before COVID hit, it was myself, the building commissioner, we had a representative from we had somebody at an OSHA level. This is right before we fell under the OSHA rules in February of 2019. We looked at all the buildings, and the only issue at the time for Engine 4 over at East Chelmsford was the mechanics bay. They deemed that a life safety hazard. Working with the town manager, working with then DPW Director Gary Persichetti, we had an opportunity to move them over, the mechanic now, to Richardson Road. But as far as the life safety issues, there really weren't any outstanding life safety issues for that building. Yes, it's built in 1976. It will be the oldest substation if these are approved, but as far as life safety issues, the committee, that group, that OSHA level inspection did not find any outstanding major safety issues.
Okay, and then one more question. The fire engines, where are we, like, are there any big replacements coming up?
So for the capital, we just put one on order. Unfortunately, it's going to be 3 years. Any engine, and any diesel engine, so it's not just fire trucks, it's also DPW trucks, we have to comply with the new emission standards set by the EPA. Those motors aren't even built yet. So when the managers sign that contract, that truck is 3 years out. In the 5-year plan that I'm going to be submitting next month, there is a ladder on there, which is going to be is over $2.5 million. The ladder truck will be at 15 years.
Okay.
So.
All right, we can start discussion. Normally, I'm all for investing in infrastructure, absolutely. But I personally think I am in a little bit of a different situation than most taxpayers. I think we don't invest enough in our town. My mother still lives in town, and she has her house, and she has Social Security. I would have liked this to have been one station, not 2. Knowing that we also have a school project that we haven't invested in schools. We've always done things in this town, one department at a time. So to be quite honest, I'm kind of torn on this. like I said, I'm usually for, invest as much as we can, but we still haven't paid off the center fire station. And nor the north one, I would have maybe chosen one and then come back and do the other one, and I would have been 100% behind it. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy Arroway, Precinct 8. You've just answered a number of my questions. The one I have left, when we did the Center Fire Station and North Fire Station, we had one station under construction at a time and disruption at one station at a time. How are you planning to sequence this work so that we continue to have full coverage and full response times with two stations simultaneously?
When we met, and I say we, the committee, a couple of members here, with Weston and Sampson, we had that discussion with them. We talked about our experience with Engine 2 back in 3 years ago during COVID, how we relocated the fire station to Richardson Road. We ran out of there for 6-7 months. This is going to take a little bit longer, but the budget has built in a housing factor to stage us in a different location.
For both stations?
Correct.
Okay. All right, you can start the clock and I'll be fast. When I came in here tonight, I was absolutely opposed to this because there's two stations at a time. And I thought, and I still think, that hitting the taxpayers with that much at one time is not a good thing. But looking at your numbers and the information you've presented, I also realize that the rate of inflation on building materials and labor is escalating a lot faster than the cost of living and everything else. And the disaster recovery that we're experiencing as a nation is exacerbating that. So there's no reason to expect that it's going to slow down. So I can stand up here and say that I can support this.
Thank you.
Hello. Sherman Horton, Precinct 6. Not sure who to address this to, but could someone clarify the relationship between the ballot question for the 2.5 override and our vote tonight? In other words, if the voters don't approve the override, what happens if we approve the warrant article tonight, and vice versa? What happens if the override fails?
The motion tonight and the vote tonight is contingent upon approval at the ballot. So if the motion passes tonight by 2/3 vote and it fails at the ballot, the motion tonight dissolves, it no longer is in effect. So it's contingent vote upon passage by a majority vote at the ballot on Tuesday, November 5th.
Is it therefore valid to say that if we just all agree to vote yes tonight, we're putting this in the hands of the voters?
Yes.
All right, please, Mr. Moderator, start the clock. Thank you to the committee that put all this together. It's fantastic work. It's a good amount of presentation here, which is very helpful to the town meeting reps and the town itself. It's unfortunate that I think our constituency doesn't have good visibility to this. I'm very concerned that on election day, we're going to get a ton of people not knowing what they're voting for and basically defaulting to no. And so I'm not sure what's going to come out of any of this. And I also don't have a position to state. I'm not quite sure, but I think my position right now is to vote yes and let the voters take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Eric Hansen, Precinct 11. I have a follow-up question to the operational contingency plan during the construction period. I think first question is, could you expand a little bit, please, on what the time frame is for the construction or redesign? And then 2, have any projections been done during that time for how the contingency plan will affect response times in the respected areas?
So to answer the first question, so for the stick, if it's stick build, you're looking at 14 to 16 months of construction. Modular will be a little less. That is all based on lead time for materials. We're still running into COVID-related issues, getting materials, equipment. As far as the operational issues, certainly we will look to place our temporary station in a ideal location, much like we did with Engine 2 on Richardson Road.
So to that point, there will be a temporary station created for like coverage during the period of construction?
That is the plan. That is the plan, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Bonding?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Is the costs for that included in the bonding cap?
Yes.
All right, no further questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Rob Albon, Precinct 5, Rep. I'm also a member of the Fire Station Study Committee. Mr. Moderator, you can please start the clock. Before I begin, I want to thank all my fellow members of the Fire Station Committee for the past 3 years of work that was put in to bring this proposal to town meeting. There were some difficult discussions to be had, but I believe at the end of this, a mutual respect was gained from everyone about the perspectives of each member. This committee brought forth a proposal to present tonight, and I consider it a great success from where we began 3 years ago. Like I said, my name is Rob Albon. I've been a Chelmsford resident for the past 12 years, a firefighter in Chelmsford for 8 years, and the union president of the Chelmsford Firefighters, Local 1839, for the past 4 years. I stand before this town meeting to emphatically support Warrant Article 16. My objective on this committee was to address some of the crucial health and safety factors that affect your firefighters on a daily basis. Yes, the brave men and women of the Chelmsford Fire Department are your firefighters, who swore an oath to protect and serve and answer the call wherever it may be. We are now asking the residents of this town meeting to support your firefighters in their time of need. Cancer in the fire service is an epidemic, so much so that on July 1st, 2022, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, which is the cancer agency for the World Health Organization, classified the occupational exposure as a firefighter as a Group 1 carcinogen, the highest possible rating. Firefighters have a 9% higher risk of being diagnosed with cancer and a 14% higher risk of dying from cancer than the general U.S. population. In 2023, 72% of the deaths caused to firefighters nationwide was the result of occupational cancer. Research has shown that firefighters are being exposed to dangerous carcinogens not only in the fire ground, but where we live. We call these stations our second home, and right now at Station 3 and 5, firefighters are being exposed to these carcinogens. Through our turnout gear being stored inside of the garage bays, which are directly attached to our living quarters, the off-gassing from this gear gets into the air, which greatly increases our risk for developing cancer. The same logic can be applied to our trucks themselves, the diesel exhaust particulates from these fire engines being in our living quarters. These stations were built over 50 years ago and are not equipped to handle the needs of a modern fire station. Now, I'm not just up here advocating for the current members of this department. I'm advocating for your children and your grandchildren and anyone else who wants to be a firefighter in Chelmsford one day and proudly take that oath to protect and serve so others may live. Our firefighters have accepted the fact that when a call comes in and we head out the door, we walk into the unknown. The job is dangerous. No one is saying we didn't sign up for it. However, it shouldn't be as dangerous than walking into work to start your shift and immediately being exposed to these cancer-causing carcinogens. On behalf of the brave men and women of the Chelmsford Fire Department, I ask for your support and vote yes on Warrant Article 6. And furthermore, show up on Election Day and vote yes on Question 6. Mr. Moderator, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick Mahoney, Precinct 2. Tough act to follow. One of the questions, Mr. Cohen, you answered one half of the question about the passage of the bill. If we don't get the two-thirds majority this evening and the town still goes to vote on November 5th, what happens at that point?
At that point, if the motion failed this evening and the ballot passed on November 5th, then the provisions of Proposition 2.5 under state law don't prescribe the order for the votes. So if it did pass at the election, then the select board or petition could call a town meeting, a special town meeting at which to revisit the issue in light of the results of the election on November 5th. So I don't want people to feel that the vote on November 5th has no meaning, because it does. The reason that it was scheduled in this sequence is because this is our regularly scheduled date for fall town meeting, and obviously the election date is prescribed. That's why it's in this order. But it could have easily been in the other order, and then the town meeting reps would have had, the choice to make after the election result. So, again, I don't want people to feel that it's meaningless. So, if the vote passes at the ballot, and it did not pass by 2/3 this evening, then it could be returned to town meeting within, the law prescribes a period, I believe, of 120 days from the election at the ballot, the override vote, to have the town meeting continue, related to that.
And so would that be at the discretion of the board, or would that be, or a petition be required to have that done?
Either way, the select board could call a town meeting, or it could be petitioned to call a town meeting for that
Because
purpose.
people have already voted on this. There are about a couple thousand written in ballots already. People have already voted on this, and what we're doing tonight may or may not be moot based upon that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Latina, Precinct 9. Question for you, Chief. The mutual aid, I noticed in your charts, it makes Chelmsford look like it's an island. We have mutual aid in all the surrounding communities, like East Chelmsford, Billerica?
We're in District 6, so we do respond within our district. And we'll respond outside if there's a big enough, like we went to Saugus a couple of years ago, but yes, we have a mutual aid pact.
But in your analysis, you didn't include the fact that a second engine might be coming from North Billerica Station, or the new station they're putting in over by what used to be Max 2. Wouldn't that cover, I'm wondering why we didn't look at that from, this is a 50-year analysis. Why wouldn't we look at sharing a truck and some firefighters from the communities that are, where your chart's showing white and green, we can't get there in 4 minutes? Why we didn't use that analysis?
If I understand that question correctly, what you're describing sounds like what they call automatic aid. So we have that in town for responses on 495. So we will respond 495 south to go to like Boston Road and Westford, because we can get there before Westford. And in turn, Westford will respond 495 north to get up to North Road. But we don't have automatic aid agreements with Billerica or other departments. It's very difficult. Things have to be mapped out. They have to be agreed to. They have to survive different administrations and chiefs. But the one we have with Westford has stood the test of time. But we did not do a response time with Billerica because, quite frankly, that station has, one, that has not been built, and two, we don't have the data and the analysis to do right now to do that.
So your analysis was basically in Chelmsford as an island, yes?
The analysis, the data that we had was just on Chelmsford Fire Department responses, yes.
Okay. Do you had a picture of the South Station on here? Is that available? The map of
The site plan.
I know there's one back on the table back behind us here.
The site plan. Site.
No, the
Site
map,
plan.
the map, the overview picture, as though you're looking down.
Oh, the site plan.
Chief,
The site plan.
There you go. I know I asked a question separately at one of the meetings, but wouldn't it make sense, instead of building a two-story building on that too skinny lot from a 50-year plan, to buy the house next door for a couple $1 million? It would be $2 million cheaper. I'm sure they'd probably consider it. Would we think about doing that instead of building a two-story that's on a skinny lot?
What I could say on behalf of the committee, we did explore other sites. We did explore available property. We did not entertain any pieces that were not available.
Okay, and your 495 Route 3 question, our trucks go there a lot.
Correct, yes.
Does the state pay for that activity, or is it just Chapter 90 money and we cover huge
No,
piece
we're
of
responsible
495
for that.
Route 3?
We're responsible for the coverage.
They do not pay us when we show up there?
They do not.
They don't help us pay for that station
No.
when we show up there?
No.
Okay. How many times do you had some 6,000 call numbers. Is it 1,000 to the highways?
Like 150.
150, okay. You can start the clock, Mr. Moderator. Frankly, I'm horribly embarrassed that I didn't know the deplorable conditions that our firefighters were sleeping in those 24-hour shifts at those two stations. Absolutely disgraceful. We should all be ashamed of ourselves. Camp Watauga had better sleeping quarters for the Boy Scouts that showed up in the summertime, Chief. And I'm sorry, I personally did not know the condition of those sleeping conditions. Thank you for showing it to this town meeting. I have to say to our town, I'm very embarrassed to have 9,200 ballots out there without this kind of analysis to the population that's out there already voting. Since Monday night, there's been 3 days of voting, and we pushed this off an extra night for whatever reason, and so there's been 3 days more of voting out here by a population that hasn't seen this analysis. We've got to take better care and maintenance of our buildings. Little sidebar here, South Row School buildings, we put the roof on that thing. I remember when my kids were there. It's got holes in it. It's leaking water and getting molded with the kids. We've got to do maintenance every single year. We need to build the money into our budgets to do the maintenance required. And those fire stations should never look like that, Chief. And I apologize for town meeting not taking care of your men and your women of your team. Thank you very much for taking care of us, regardless. Thank you.
Thank you.
Glenn Thorin, Precinct 7. I had a question, but as you flashed through those slides, I saw the answer. Just popped up there, how old were the fire stations? 50, 47 years old. They're at the end of their useful life. And I've been in both fire stations, and yes, something needs to be done. So looking at the overall picture of what our job is here tonight is, what do we want the outcome of this meeting? Oh, start the clock, I'm sorry. Should have waved at you, I apologize.
With you, I never know if it's going to be a question or
No, it wasn't going to be a question, I don't think. But for what we're trying to do here tonight is to, at least for what we can do, is to get the ball rolling to make these changes. Now, I was waiting to determine exactly what I would say here based on the presentation tonight and the thoroughness of the presentation, and I liked it. There's only so much you can do with the space you're in, but I think they utilize the space extremely well for the purpose of increasing the availability to a variety of tasks that have to occur in the fire stations. So I was happy with that. So now what do? The first thing that came to mind is if we go to one station and just pass one station, we'll have to go to another station in the future. Now, what are the odds that that station that we didn't pass tonight will be cheaper? Probably low. And I suspect there may be increases in prices, 10, 20, 30%, like we've seen with the inflation recently. So we know it's going to cost more. So I think we ought to, in our position tonight, vote these through with a 2/3 vote, because it is going to go to the population of Chelmsford to vote on the override. Our job is to make sure that the presentation today was useful, was reasonable, and would pass muster for putting it in the hands of the voters. Now, I do, as a previous speaker said, feel a little bit sorry that the voters didn't have the entirety of the information that we got to see tonight. Because if they did, I'm fairly certain that they would replace these deteriorating stations for all the reasons that we heard. But here we are tonight looking for a 2/3 vote, which is a little bit more difficult than a majority vote, to pass this on to the voters to get what they believe is going to be, their approval or disapproval based on the information they have to work with for us to take the next step. If the voters turn it down, we're going to have to take another look at it. Maybe inform the voters, maybe have another chance to get it through the general population of Chelmsford. But for tonight, I'm going to urge you to pass this with a 2/3 vote to get it through this step into the hands of the voters and see what they have to say as well. And based on that, we'll either do it at the lowest price possible, which is now, or have to relook at it. But please vote for this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thomas Hall, Precinct 7, I move the question.
We have a motion to move the question. Okay. So, we'll entertain a vote to move the question. A yes vote means that we will dispense with further discussion and then we would vote on the underlying matter. A no vote means we continue as we are currently operating.
So again, this is not a vote on the motion, on the article itself, but whether to stop debate. It seemed a little early to be doing that, but apparently the
It
town meeting
passes
reps feel
67 in
that
favor,
it is time
47
to vote on the
opposed,
full
2
article.
abstentions. I'm sorry, it fails. A 2/3 vote. It failed. One second. It is. I think so. Yeah. Pretty sure that that's right. I'm going to check it out.
The question here is whether this vote
Yep.
to move the question requires a...
Yeah, it does require a 2/3 vote, so it failed. So, Mr. Regazio, you're on.
Mr. Regazio, Precinct 2, just a couple of questions. Is there any advantage of doing the two buildings at the same time? And I assume there'd be, two separate contractors? And do we have the ability to manage both of them at the same time? That's a loaded question.
So to do 2 projects at once.
Yes.
So as far as the contractors, I guess it would depend on the type of building. You have certain people who can only do modular buildings, that's a specialty. And then you obviously have people who can do
So there'll be
these.
2 separate contractors? Also.
Potentially.
Okay.
But you could have 2 potential contractors, but one owner's project manager that oversees both projects at the same time.
Okay, do we have the capacity to do that, to manage the 2 of them at the same time within the DPW or the fire station, the fire department?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Question is, I think this was answered before. My hearing is not quite good sometimes. How long will the Station 5 be out of order while it's being constructed?
If it's traditional stick build, the schedule is generally 14 to 16 months. If it's modular construction, it'll be a little bit less.
Okay. What happens to the apparatus and the staff that's at that station during the construction?
So the budget, when we sat down with Wes and Sampson, we discussed our experience with relocating the firefighters when we did the Engine 2 project, and we are looking to replicate that with both Engines 3 and 5. So there is a budget within the $25 million to house the firefighters in temporary quarters during this project.
And again, the last question is, once the 2 buildings are renovated and we have all these extra bedrooms, will the staff be increased at those 2 stations beyond what there is right now, assuming the population stays the same?
So that we've had those discussions, yes, to increase. That's part of the discussion that we've had with this committee, is to build these and then to address the staffing issue.
So the staffing will increase once the building...
Potentially will increase.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, Doreen Daschle, Precinct 9. I have a couple questions, and it's about the solar panels. I know solar panels don't last 50 years, and this is a 50-year project. My other question is I've personally seen roofs of houses with solar panels on, and they always end up with holes. My other question is...
Well, why don't you let him answer the first question?
All right.
So as far as the product, I can't speak to that. I did have a lengthy discussion with the energy manager for the town that works in DPW about the product, about how we would potentially carry this out. So he would be involved in this project. He would oversee it. He'd be involved with the grant writing. But as far as the particular product, I don't have any information on that.
Okay, my other question was, like I said, I know a little bit about solar panels, but not too much. Can a solar panel be put into wetlands, like as a farm, solar farm?
That would be a question for the conservation agent, but having a conversation with this, I would probably guess no.
Okay, I would guess no too,
No.
but, because there's no dry land there that you could put solars like on the land instead of on the roof, right?
They can't because of you running current
Okay.
to those panels.
And the other question was, is the solar panels, the energy got to be put into lithium batteries or put back to the company? The energy company?
It depends, my understanding is, it depends on what the arrangement is.
Okay.
Whether the town owns it or leases it.
Okay, and last question is, do we now know how to put out a fire from a lithium battery?
That one I can answer. Yes, we do. We train on that. We have the equipment for it, so the answer is yes.
Okay. Start the clock, please. Again, I also apologize for the condition of these firehouses. As a Chelmsford resident, we should have been more on top of this. It's a deplorable condition that our firefighters have had to endure. And I am all for this project. These firefighters deserve the best. They put their lives on the line every day for us. So I am asking that you please pass this article. Thank you.
Hi,
Thank you.
Joshua Walsh, 50 Clinton Avenue, Precinct 6. Question to you. With the increase in medical calls, is there a possibility of bringing on either a BLS or ALS ambulance to the crew in the future as well, or is that not something you're considering right now?
That wasn't part of the committee discussion, though.
Fair enough. Mr. Ryder, you can start the clock. So 6 or 7 years ago, at my house, we experienced a 4 or 5 alarm fire, burnt down our entire barn, almost the entirety of our house. The fire department responded within, their 4 minutes from, Station 1 and, the possibility of Station 3 and 5 as well. And since it was such a large fire, it took them so long to, burn down these flames, there could have been the possibility that these same firefighters going back to their own stations, not be able to clean their apparatuses, their clothing, anything else like that. And I think that's an awful way because I've personally experienced this. My family's been in the EMT and firefighters for years. I have a brother who's in the EMT. My dad was a firefighter. And just that they can't clean themselves with the cancer-causing chemicals from all these new homes and everything, they should be able to, house themselves, clean themselves, make sure they have all their pure necessities. And with these buildings reaching their 50-year lifespans, these 2 new projects will help increase their, quality of life for their jobs and what they need to do because they're trying to protect us. So I am in full support of these. Yes, it's going to cost a lot of money, but sometimes you need to spend that money just to make everything better for your residents, for your employees, and everything else. So I hope you all support this like I do, and I want to thank you for your time and thank you for presenting this to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Lee Williams, Precinct 6. I have a question on slide 53. And first of all, I want to thank everybody who worked on this so long and so hard. It's an excellent presentation. I just want to clarify, on this one it shows 4 stations the response time for 4 stations, either eliminating Station 3 or Station 5. But then the slide right before it, 52, we're still looking for it. There we go. Slide 52 shows the 3-station response times, and it shows the scenario where you eliminate Station 3 and 5 and build a new one around Littleton and Hunt Road, right? So instead of 2 new stations, we're building 1 new station in the middle. And so I just want to make sure that you, and I'm sure you did, but no one's addressed it yet. In the 4-station scenario, did you also look at that, combining those 2 into 1 and keeping the other 3? And what were the response times for that? Was that also inadequate?
So we looked at the 5-station that we have right now. We looked at 4 stations, we looked at 3-station configurations, and we looked at, as presented, not only just the first due engine to a scene, but also the second due. So if the first due engine, let's say engine 2 is tied up, what is the response for the second due engine to get there? So we looked at all that data, and then the strength of the model kept coming back to the 5-station, which is really the strength of our system, the 5-station configuration.
Okay. Well, thank you. I figured, I was sure that you had looked at it. It's just it hadn't, I didn't hear anybody talk about it, so I thought we should cover that.
That 4-station configuration that you're speaking of is actually in that first slide over there. So if you can barely see it in the top right corner, that's Station 4 currently. In the center, in the middle of that is Station 1 currently. And then down to the left in the middle, that was the combined proposal for a combined station on Hunt and Littleton Road, which would combine engine 3 and engine 5. So that 4-station configuration is over there that you're speaking of.
That is it. Okay, great. Because it says eliminating Station 3. It doesn't talk about creating a new location. So that's why I misunderstood. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Christine McNamara, Precinct 8. Thank you very much for the excellent presentation. I just had one quick question on the building configuration 3, the proposal. If you could pull up that overlay one more time. And it's related to the elevation between the wetlands and where the fire station would sit. Just wondering, with some of the heavy rains and whatnot, what the differential is for those contour lines. Do you know roughly? And in other words, if we have these heavy rains and flooding and whatnot, is there any chance that that would fill up those basins almost like a catch basin and come into the building?
So when we had the initial design for the station, I met with the conservation agent. We went over different scenarios. He has different overlays that he can put beyond what you see here. And he felt pretty confident. We will still have to bring this for approval for conservation. So this will require us to go before the Conservation Committee to get approval.
Okay.
But I sat down with him. He felt confident that this would meet, that approval.
Okay. But so for those contour lines that are on your map, do you know, is that 5 feet or 10 feet a differential? Do you know? Does anybody?
I don't. I can't see it. No, I don't.
No. Okay. And then would it be of any benefit to, instead of doing a modular rectangle there, to pull it in away from where it would potentially be wet and make an L configuration around the existing structure?
So we did.
Do you understand what I'm asking?
So as far as pulling it back, if I understand your question correctly, yes.
Yeah.
So we did look at different configurations. We also looked at where the utilities run under the ground, and this was the best fit.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Padre Blippen, Precinct 11. Few more questions, Chief. I'm curious what made Station 2 last 66 years as a design factor. What made Station 2, not Station Princeton Street, last 66 years before it required renovation? What were the design elements or aspects that made it so unique that it stood the test of time versus the other ones failing by about another 15
Well, I just
years?
think in general, I think I think the question came up earlier about maintenance. That's our home. We take a lot of pride in these buildings. We maintain, we being the firefighters, maintain those buildings, and I think that is reflective in the long duration of Engine 2, that it's lasted so long, that, you know, they take pride, that's their home.
Okay,
So-
thank you. So that's a best practice in some ways, of even though they shouldn't have to, but if they took care of it, it's good, but it's a
And
best
also, we
practice.
worked with the town over the years, not just Engine 2, but the other stations,
Okay.
To invest in these buildings.
Understood.
Yep.
Station 4, a question was asked about it's coming up, or your assessment was that it doesn't require Station 4, which is the River Neck Road East Station, I believe. Is at 47 years, your assessment was it does not require any immediate upgrade, or it complies to safety standards, essentially. But when we look at a lifetime, it's already 47 years. The next best thing could be in another 20 years it comes up for something, potentially given Station 2 as an exemplar or a precedent. Is there anything that is in a wish list that should be combined now that might affect Station 4 that we should be planning for right now, even though it's not there, but should be in some ways be thought through, so that we don't run into this unknown situation that just around the corner of 2030?
I really think that's sort of beyond the scope of what we're dealing with here tonight. I understand your question, and you certainly can ask the chief about that afterwards. But
Okay.
right now, let's stay focused on.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you for guiding. Another question is, based on the call data, a lot of the calls have gone to medical emergencies. Is the design that's been considered for Station 3 and 5 modular enough that in a 50-year lifespan, if we did have to add other types of equipment or configurations, is it fairly modular enough that we don't have to rip and redo or come back for another auxiliary station or something? Are these two stations capable of handling a different type of equipment or additional services, or a significant higher capacity of Chelmsford population?
They are designed for additional staffing. Certainly, if you look at like Engine 3, we have an issue with the apparatus floor right now cracking. But yes, I mean, that is based on our experience with 7 North Road, having lived that, yes, that is a concern that we talked when we met with Weston and Sampson, the committee, that, you know, we wanted to make sure that this station was built to grow for 50 years or more.
What's the approximate staffing increase that you're thinking this new configuration will help you reach out with?
So when you look at a building and you look at an engine and you look at staffing, the code calls for 4 members on a piece. So that is part of how an engineer will look at it as well, that potentially you could have 4 members on that piece. And then you build up, if you have a storm, you might have to house additional members.
Okay. Was it considered as to what the top, both from the apparatus location sizing perspective specifically, was it considered that if in the next 25 years Chelmsford grows, I know it won't happen, but still, let's assume statisticals, I want to understand that because it can happen, there's a finite chance. If we grow another 10,000 because of MBTA housing in 40 years, 25 years, something happens, we don't want to rip this thing apart. Does the building have the modular capacity to host additional personnel and equipment that will serve that much capacity?
So
or
part of this
requirement?
project, much like Engine 2, is to also open up the apparatus bay. So Engine 3, the proposal calls for keeping the apparatus bay.
Okay.
But like we did with Engine 2, we opened up an additional bay for that reason. So right now, we can only house a couple pieces. With this proposal, it will open it up. It will actually create drive-through ability, which we don't really have right now, but it will also allow us to house another piece if we have to.
Thank you. You may start the clock, Mr. Moderator. I think a lot has been said about the need for this facility, and I think this a great job done by the Fire Station Study Committee in terms of preparing us for the next 50 years of infrastructure. It's very important, it's basic, and I think from the configurations and the discussions, I do get a sense that there is a plan to try and address a sort of a sensitivity to growth that may occur, may not occur, but at least is ready for the future in that sense. And it's important for us to continue. Hopefully, in the future, not just Chelmsford and its neighboring towns, we will agree to more shared assets, not just holding the assets to ourselves so that benefits can be reaped and the investments that we make are accrued over multiple towns, because we cannot afford to continue to just be thinking about it as a town level. We have to think at a county level possibly for more mutual aid and automatic aid kind of situations. But hopefully that will dawn upon everyone over time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deirdre Conley, 19 Billrica Road. So I want to thank the committee for your hard work and excellent presentation, and also thank Rob for your words from the heart. I feel the town clearly needs this infrastructure improvement. I also am a bit horrified to learn of some of the things we learned tonight. I'm actually quite surprised that we don't have OSHA standards that somehow would prevent us from having their living and working situation be in the current state it's in. I would like to ask that everyone here, in the interest of our town, support this very necessary improvement in our infrastructure, and also to campaign in the next few 12 days or whatever it is on behalf of, talk to your friends, talk to your coworkers, talk to your neighbors, that they also should vote for the override. I think that there's kind of an automatic no to new taxes that people have kind of built in their core. I know previous overrides, I've seen people coming who I've never seen before coming to the polls to vote no. But I really think it's important that we all take it upon ourselves to try and educate our townspeople.
Thank you.
Ann Worth, Precinct 7. I have a question about the OSHA standards that she just mentioned, the previous speaker just mentioned. It says on the slide here that there is a proposed new standard. What happens, and I assume that the two stations that we're talking about do not meet those new standards. What happens if these new standards are passed? Do the stations have to be closed?
So right now, this is in the hearing stage. It is expected that they will slowly release the proposals next year, 2025, with the impact hitting in 2026. But to answer your question, if we're not compliant, we will have to address it.
Meaning they'll have to be closed if we can't
Potentially.
pay to fix it?
And I'm not here to scare anybody, but we will have to address the issues. There's really not a lot of wiggle room if we're found to be non-compliant.
Okay, I think this is where you would start the clock for me. I really don't want those stations to be closed. And that's basically what it boils down to. If these look like they're going to be passed, I think we don't really want to do without two fire stations. So I'm going to vote for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Ginger Scoob, Precinct 5. First of all, thank you to the gentleman behind me for not moving the question before I could ask one. I have a question for the committee. There was a slide in here that showed all of the different things that you guys did to publicize this. However, one of the questions that remained at our table was there ever anything sent out to town people, like in the mail? We saw it on Facebook. We saw the tours, I'm just wondering how people other than us know about this. So, thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Moderator. As we discussed this evening, this is subject to an election ballot vote on November 5th. And Massachusetts has strict election laws that we cannot utilize public resources, expend public monies to influence an election. So we sought that. We sought the advice of counsel. We actually had a pamphlet all drafted. We were going to mail and include with the property tax bills because we know everybody gets one of those. Can't do it. Violates state law.
I see a soul standing there who wants to move the question, and I'm asking the rest...
Excuse me, but I don't need to move the question.
Well, then, there you go. Okay. So, we're going to vote. It takes a 2/3 vote. Yes will be to allow this to be put on the ballot, and if the voters vote in favor of it, we won't have to come back again. A no vote means that if the voters vote it down, we don't have to come back again. It's going to pass easily. Article passes 116 in favor, 7 opposed, 2 abstentions. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Thank you very much. We got out here earlier than I thought.
Early indeed. This is almost unprecedented for town meeting to actually get out sooner than we expected to. As you heard, there was only one article being discussed tonight that has to do with the renovation of the 2 of the town's 5 fire stations. It culminates a town meeting, a relatively short set of articles on the warrant. Only 21, a couple of them were withdrawn, the consent agenda, not a lot of complexity. If you were with us on Monday night, you saw that there was some discussion about what exactly to do with a larger than usual amount of free cash. That's the money left over at the end of the fiscal year, and that was resolved. I think one of the things that struck me about this town meeting was the large number of votes that were almost unanimous or were unanimous. It seems like everybody was on the same page, and you saw that here with Article 16. I'm sure that the people here are very happy with that. Now it remains a wait and see to see what happens on November 5th, because as has been pointed out, there is not a lot that has been able to go out in terms of informing the everyday voters, the people that are not paying attention to this broadcast or to the town's website. So it's incumbent on everybody to try to get the maximum number of people informed about this question before they vote on November 5th. It would be deflating, I think, to have such a full-throated support of this here at town meeting to fall flat because people are worried about the cost that they'll bear, and that often happens for these Prop 2.5 questions. We'll see. Just have to see what happens. One final thing before I let you go. You might have noticed I was wearing a tie tonight. This is not just any tie. This has the crest of the town of Chelmsford, England, which I acquired more than 30 years ago when I visited and sat down with the mayor. That's a little aside. I want you to all be safe out there, especially for Halloween that's coming up. I'm Kelly Beatty for the staff and volunteers of Chelmsford TeleMedia who provided this for you this evening. We want to wish you a wonderful fall and winter. Hope there's not too much snow. And we'll see you in spring for our next edition of Town Meeting. Good night.